Get laughing. They might be better than my jokes.
Oh.
Maybe not.
I don't want to read this. Last time we were for. All right. Hey, I'm Max Shultz. I'm out of Haverhill, Massachusetts, and I do stand-up comedy, mostly storytelling. And I have a handful of stories for today. So my freshman year of high school, or actually my entire high school, Haverhill High School, it was very strange. But my freshman year, I took Algebra 2, and if you were a freshman taking Algebra 2, everybody had the same final project. It was, 2009, and the final project was to solve the BP oil crisis, which for a classroom of 20-something freshman high schoolers is a bit ridiculous, I thought. So my group for this project was me, this guy Ted, and this guy Alex. You'll learn more about me as the night goes on. Maybe you'll appreciate this story a little bit more as that happens. Ted was a very quiet, reserved kid who I would later find out was unusually and frightfully good with knives, but was also hilarious one-on-one, but he didn't like talking in front of a group of people. And Alex was a very preppy, wealthy student who all he cared about was getting the grade, going to a good college, getting a great job, and going on and on, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for some reason, the three of us were paired as a group. So, as freshman kids do, we waited until the very last minute to do the project, and it was the night before, and Alex couldn't make it, so it was just me and Ted. And we had like 4 hours to do this thing, and Ted and I goofed off for like 3.5 of those hours. And at the end of that time, Ted and I went, well, okay, we gotta do this project. And what we ended up with was we were going to have somewhere, I've yet to find it, there is a very poorly done paint file of this being done. At some point, I'll put that on my Facebook page or something, but there is so we were gonna have a lot of people collect a giant wad of gum, light the top of the ocean on fire. The Navy SEALs would take our thing of gum, go to the bottom of the ocean and clog it just long enough so that other Navy SEALs could go to the actual problem and fix it before the fire and or the gum became a problem again. We got to class the next morning, showed Alex the project. He was almost in tears how angry he was with us. He's probably still pissed to this day. And in like 5 minutes, Alex drew up a much better presentation. But Ted and I shut him up and we did ours. Alex didn't talk, he was behind us all mopey, and we presented to a class of 20-something kids and our teacher this project. But my favorite part of the story is, after we had that project in, about a week later, we got our grade. Our bubblegum fire idea got an A-, which means she thought that might work. That's not how they fixed it, but she thought it could work. And that has made me happy ever since, and I'm sure Alex is still a little bit upset about it. My next story is totally unrelated, and I hope that's all right. But I used to work with this guy, James. All you need to know about James from my story about James is that he is 22 years old, and for all intents and purposes, not mentally challenged at all. Just very, very dumb. So one day I was at work, doing dishes, by myself, and James came up to me very quietly and he goes, Max, listen, I think I'm going to be a father soon. And I, whoa, James, that's a big deal. What happened? Like, how'd this come about? He goes, well, I ran into my ex on the street the other day, and she said she's pregnant, she's about 3 months pregnant, and it's either mine or this other guy's. I go, wow, you should probably get that figured out, like, find out whose kid this is. And James was very weird, as I said, so he walked away from me, and we never talked again that day. So the next day I worked with James, I talked to him, and I said, hey man, listen, we never got to finish talking, but you really need to like go to the hospital or whatever, get some tests done, find out this is your kid. And he goes, no, Max, listen, I figured out it's not my baby. And I go, oh, okay, how did you figure that out? And he goes, well, the timing doesn't line up. And I go, so the time that you stopped seeing her and the time the baby was conceived, there's too much time between it, logically couldn't be yours? And he goes, no, the timing just doesn't line up. And I go, well, James, listen, if it's not what I just said, what do you mean the timing doesn't line up? And he goes, well, Max, I've been thinking about it. Pause here. James was worrying about this for about 2 weeks. He goes, Max, I thought about it, and me and that girl never did the thing you have to do to have a baby. I'm like, James, what do you mean? He goes, well, I don't know, I was just caught up in the moment, and then he walked away again. That's the end of the story, but James never had sex with the lady, and he was convinced it was his kid for about 2 weeks. I miss working with James. He gave me stories. When I was about 4 years old, Santa Claus gave me a Rugrats Hanukkah on VHS. I don't have more of that, but I just like telling people that happened. I still own it somewhere. So, although he stepped out, the gentleman I was talking to earlier knows Haverhill, Massachusetts. That's where I'm from. This story takes place in a Chinese food place there. So one day, about 8 o'clock at night, I was in a Chinese food restaurant eating chow mein by myself, and I'm going to paint you a picture. You walk into the restaurant, you open the door, and there's 2 rows of 4 booths to your left and the same to your right, and facing you is the menu board and the woman at the counter. So I'm at the third to closest to the door booth at the far right of the store. If you're just walking in, there's a family of 2 people, maybe 25 years old, and like a 2-year-old daughter in the back corner, and there's an elderly Chinese lady at the front doing stuff. I'm sitting there eating, they're sitting there eating, she's on her phone or the computer or whatever, and a woman walks in, seemingly normal, middle-aged, I didn't think anything of it. And she looks at me like we've known each other for a long time, but I've never seen her before in my life. But I kind of nod along, whatever, you know. And she puts down her thing, she had a bag and a tablet or something, she puts it down on the table, and she looks at the board to figure out what to eat. She goes up there, and she's arguing with the Chinese lady, and I hear the Chinese lady go, "No, you have to pay if you want food, go back there." Okay. So she looks at me, and I shrug her shoulder, trying to comfort her a little bit. I don't know the lady, but, it sucks. And she comes back to me, and she goes, "Well, she just doesn't understand. You can't charge me for food if I don't buy anything." And I wanted to say, well, I just watched you try, but you can't let a crazy lady know you know they're crazy. That's dangerous. So she's upset and angry and doesn't really get what's going on. She walks back up to the front, and she tries to do this again with the Chinese lady, and the Chinese lady doesn't yell again, but she gets a little bit angry. And the lady comes back to me, and she just doesn't get it. Well, and she gathers her things together, and she looks at me, and she goes, "Well, if you find out, let me know." And I go, "Okay." And she asked me how I was doing that day, and I said, "I'm doing all right." And she goes, and I said, "How are you doing?" She goes, "Well, I'm okay. I'm Mariah Carey, except they owe me money." She said she was Mariah Carey, not like that was her name, or she was that icon. But it's like if I said to you, "I'm doing all right, but she owes me money today," except this lady told me, "I'm Mariah Carey, except they owe me money." So upon leaving the store, she said, "Let me know if you find out." I said, "All right." She goes, "You'll let me know later, right?" "I've never met this woman in my life." And I said, "Yeah, I'll let you know later if I find out." And not to me, not to the Chinese lady, not to the family in the corner. She gathers the thing and she walks to the door. She looks at the restaurant, and I think she was talking to the store as a whole, and she goes, "Well, goodbye," and she vanished into the night. And as soon as the door closed behind her, me, the Asian lady, and the Chinese lady, and the family in the corner, I'll go, "Well, that was really weird. That was really weird." And the Chinese lady stands up and looks at the 4 of us and goes, "That lady's crazy. She comes in here all the time. She orders nothing. She gets angry, and she doesn't earn any money, and then she walks out. She's the crazy lady. She's the crazy lady." And I finished my food very quickly, and I walked out because, well, I just didn't want to be at that scene anymore. And my next story is kind of what's become my closer. So I'm 20 years old. I've been out of high school for a few years, and my high school version of myself would hate this story, but that's okay. I have grown to sort of like country music. It's all right. But I like country radio. I used to be a radio DJ, so I listen to the radio a lot. And country radio is interesting because it's the only place where you find really, really bizarre things. My example, other than the joke I'm going to tell you, is some kind of fish commercial that it's a fish supposed to be seducing a woman, but it's awesome. I don't remember what kind of fish it is, but check it out. I think it's I don't know, it's some seafood place. I used to know it. Anyways, so I was listening to country radio. I was flipping through the stations, and I caught the tail end of a song. And the last 2 lines, and in a very Keith Urban-esque voice, the words go, "And I'll be rolling down the street, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice, with my mind on my money, and my money on my mind." And the song ended. And I realized 2 things at this point. 1, this was a very country version of Snoop Dogg's Gin and Juice. And 2, that Gin and Juice is a very passable country song. That's it for me tonight, everybody.
All right, thank you.